All right, yeah. I grew up in a charismatic church, so I definitely understand those areas where this quote unquote slain in the spirit, and people are laying on of hands, and you falling back. In some cases you're shaking on the ground and things like that. So I definitely totally get that. So in some of your content, you speak of it being a metaphysical origin, this prosperity gospel being a metaphysical origin. What do you mean by that? And can you go into that a little bit of exactly what are some of the concepts of how it be, what's the origin of this prosperity gospel?
Yeah, sure, Marlon. So that was my exposure to it as a teenager, but it wasn't until years later, after I graduated from college and then I went to seminary. As a seminary student, I began to study this movement at a more academic level because I had an interest in it. And I even wrote my master's thesis on Benny Hinn, who at the time was kind of the charismatic rock star. He's not nearly as popular now as he was 20 years ago. But I went to a lot of Benny Hinn crusades, wrote my master's thesis, studied this stuff, and what I came to realize is that the origins of the prosperity gospel are not Christian at all. The origins of the Word of Faith movement can be traced back directly to the metaphysical cults. Christian Science, New Age, New Thought, Gnosticism. These are metaphysical cults. And metaphysical, it's a big word, but all it really means is beyond the physical realm, beyond what we can see and touch here. And for example, like Christian Science, which is neither Christian nor scientific, by the way. It's very poorly named. But Christian Science holds that, and this is true of Christian Science, this is true of New Thought, that was begun by a man named Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, and then Mary Baker Eddy was a student of Quimby's, and she took his teachings and from that developed Christian Science. But basically, Christian Science holds that whatever you think about, you will attract to yourself. This is the same is true with New Thought. If you think positive things, you'll attract positive things to yourself. If you think negative things, you'll attract negative things to yourself. Sickness and disease is an illusion. It's not real. And so if you're sick, if you've got a cold, like I'm just coming off of a cold and I've been congested. My voice sounds kind of funny. I'm runny nose, all that kind of stuff. But that's just an illusion. It's not real. But if you think about it, if you confess it, if you speak that you're sick, then you will entrench that. It will become physical reality. But so I mean that is the warp and woof of the Word of Faith movement. If you're sick, it's your thought. It's your improper thinking. You have been thinking sick thoughts. Andrew Womack states this explicitly, as do all of them. So there's a lot of these metaphysical cultic overtones in the Word of Faith movement. New Age, New Thought, Gnosticism. Gnosticism believed in this spirit-matter dualism. Spirit is good, matter is bad. And the Gnostics believed that to go deep with God, then you had to disengage your mind, put your intellect in neutral. Then and only then can you get this divine revelation knowledge. Well, you see that in the charismatic movement all over the place. That you have to if you really want to go deep with God, you've got to disengage your mind. The mind, and you look at the charismatic movement, there is a tangible undercurrent of anti-intellectualism in the charismatic movement. The mind is your enemy. So the mind is the enemy of spirituality. So if you want to be spiritual, then you've got to disengage your mind. You've got to put your brain in neutral. But the Bible never tells us to do that. In fact, Jesus says we are to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, and mind. He gave us a mind for a reason. He wants us to use it. Paul wrote to Timothy, study to show yourself approved unto God. So the Bible never enjoins us to disengage our intellect. A disengaged intellect is the friend of the false teacher. False teachers want you to disengage your mind. They want you to disengage your intellect, because if you're not thinking too much, it becomes a lot easier to accept what they're telling you, this garbage that they're telling you. So if you're thinking about it, if you're being a Berean, studying, rightly dividing the word of truth, that a false teacher doesn't want that. Yeah. So they encourage you to disengage your mind.
Yeah, that's one thing I do emphasize. There are occasions where, like, I teach Bible studies, and occasions where my pastor, he allows me to preach, and I continuously emphasize, when someone comes to you and they tell you something, for example, someone may say, oh, I got a new word from God, they call themselves prophesying, God gave me a new word. I always encourage the congregants to, chapter and verse, be able to study the word. Don't just read it, but study it so you can actually be able to understand what these individuals are saying and know what the word says as when they say things like that. Does the Bible speak of people being able to come and say, I have a new word, from God. I have a new word, a new revelation from God. So it's I definitely agree. God has called us to love him with our mind. Our mind is associated with the idea of full understanding and loving God, not just our feelings, not just our faith, not just our body, but our minds as well should be engaged in studying God's word and knowing God's word. So when we see these perverted areas of thought that are infiltrated the church, we'd be able to engage and refute those areas of thought. So that's definitely very true, very true.